continuing to tenaciously try to figure out the story, and so she's written a really great paper related to it that we're hoping to get published a couple places, and she asked to put together this presentation. Of course, there would be no way I would say no because it's such a great story. So, Lisa.
Well, I have to thank you all, my friends, and those that are going to be new friends, for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your patience, and for those of you who got to go up to the house, I'm hoping that everyone has been up there at some point. But I'm going to be talking about a painting tonight. If you will, I just made a little introduction to kind of get us started here, so a little visual excitement maybe. I brought you upstairs to see the painting, and I'm specifically referring to the life-size portrait of Frederick Douglass that hangs in the house, that has been well known, that it's the only full-length portrait in which Frederick Douglass sat for in his lifetime. And so with that, I have to tell you, first of all, that I think I told a few people that were in the house, I was just so honored to have this national park site to work for the short period of time that I did. I worked very hard during the busiest months. I got to give a lot of tours and met a lot of wonderful people. And some were, the people I worked with were really the best people that I had met. And they were very supportive of my excitement about being here and my continuous quest for knowledge and information about Frederick Douglass. So I have to say it's all their fault that you're here. Okay, so, but the one man that really started it all is not here. Some of you may know Braden. This is really can be blamed completely on him. So I just wanted to start with the painting. Again, that we looked at every day as guides. We would direct people to it, but they didn't get a chance to stand in front of it. They never could take a photograph of it. I believe, it's preservation of it as well as the room, the space. So as I looked at this every day, I couldn't help but think, what it was like to know him, to be the artist who got to sit with him. So that was just always lingering. And then one day, Braden, just ever so, without any cares, he just threw this picture in front of me, this paper, right here, of Dr. Du Bois, standing in front of our painting. But this is in Dr. Du Bois's New York City apartment. And he said that how about that? You know, our painting has really done a lot and seen a lot of things. And I got very excited and thought, wow, what story must there be from this painting? That's one of the reasons why I called it the life and times of a Frederick Douglass portrait, because I thought this painting has seen so many things, and I had to uncover why it was here, because there was no answer to that. So we had this gap of knowledge that I had the time and opportunity to research. Since I wasn't a permanent ranger here, I didn't have all of the additional duties that the regular rangers have. So I got to spend a lot of my extra time researching this. And as a researcher, especially with the Frederick Douglass information, many of you may already know that one of the first places you start is the Library of Congress, right? So the Library of Congress has most of the papers that were in his house when the house was assessed after his second wife passed away and willed the house to the Frederick Douglass Memorial and Historical Association. So these are preserved. So in this huge collection of letters, I started to look for the beginnings of this painting, how it started, right? So whenever you want to research something, you really want to go to the beginning. So what I found were letters between the artist and Frederick Douglass, back and forth. They had a long-standing friendship with the family he had with her parents, and then also with Sarah James Eddy, which is her name. And this is a letter from her to him, to Frederick Douglass, on 10 March 1882. Now, I want you to know that I've done my best to arrange this program in a chronological order. Not the way I found out all the information, of course, but I have put it into order, so I hope that it makes some sense for you. Because often, when we looked at the painting, we were always saying that Frederick Douglass had been mourning his wife while that painting was painted. And it's something for you to think about when we go forward, I'll tell you. So here she says, it would be better for me if you could come about the middle of April, which is what I'm pointing there. I know that the handwriting might be difficult to see. But she's specifically writing to him saying that if he needed to change it, fine, and she didn't want to make it difficult on him because specifically, I do not in any case wish to have the sitting postponed indefinitely. Sincerely yours, S.J. Eddy. And that's something I want you to think about and remember as well, which is how she signs her name. S.J. Eddy. That's the signature on the painting. And sometimes she'd write her name Sarah, but most often it was S.J. Eddy. And this comes into play again, like I said, a little bit later down the line. So then, just May 1st, so she wrote to him in March, said, come for the sitting in April. He most certainly went. And in May 1st, 1882, she is sending to him already sketches of the painting, or of the idea for the painting, the work that she did while he was sitting there. So that is just 1 month's time. But what's important to note, this is May 1st, 1882. His wife does not pass away until August of 1882. So he wasn't mourning her when he was sitting for that portrait. So that's kind of the first thing to understand about the image that you're looking at. But the artist really, like many artists, and we were discussing something about a George Washington portrait earlier, that she wanted to make this great. So this was not a quick painting. She worked on it for an entire year. This is dated June 25th, 1883, which is when she signs the painting. The painting is signed S.J. Eddy, 1883, even though he sat for an entire year before. So I found this really wonderful because this is a letter from a friend of his, Martha Green, who had involved with him all along and actually helped him when he was sad. There were different times when he was, like I said, mourning his wife. He would go to visit Martha Green. So she writes about having seen the painting completed. The letter that you're looking at here, I can't even read it on my screen, so I have to look up here because I don't have my glasses on. But it says, starting here, Sarah invited me to take a final look at the portrait and give my latest opinion of its merits. And I am very glad I could say sincerely that I prefer the last effort made to any previous one. She has gone over it all together, the face especially, and has, I think, at last reached a point where it would be difficult to improve it. So this is the painting that we see. Because just 1 month later, he is at her house visiting, again, in Rhode Island, which is where she's from, and he goes up there often. And another letter that I came across, I just saved the last part, just to kind of, again, show you about their friendship, that she writes to him, I am glad to think that you are well and happy in this beautiful springtime. I mean, this is just things that, you know, they would say to each other. And this is in 1885. Now, the next thing I come across in trying to follow this painting's life is a letter from Susan B. Anthony, who of course is friends with Frederick Douglass, right? She writes about the painting, which is what caught my eye when I was doing research. I was looking for Frederick Douglass painting or portrait, and she actually writes in her own book that when she went to visit with Miss Eddy, she saw a full-length portrait of Frederick Douglass hanging at the Academy of Science. It was on display. So this was in 1901 when Sarah was painting Susan B. Anthony. So I thought, huh. So she saw a painting of Frederick Douglass in Rhode Island in 1901. So I thought, well, maybe she hadn't given it to him yet. So that, of course, continued my research. But I will show you, one of the things that's important to note is that Sarah did not only paint Frederick Douglass, but she's also painted probably one of the most iconic images of Susan B. Anthony. This is the same artist, Sarah James Eddy. She painted this one, which is at Bryn Mawr College, and then this is a life-size portrait that's at the University of Rochester. This is an engraving of it. Obviously, the real painting is in color. I love this one. I'll just point out to you, this one is very special because this is at Susan B. Anthony's 80th birthday, and the children are handing her roses, and the concept behind it was that they were thanking her, that the future generation was thanking her for what she was giving them, which was, you know, a more certain future. So here we are, 1902. Right? 1903, Helen Pitts Douglas passes away, and she had already started the Frederick Douglass Memorial Historic Association, and she wills everything that's in the house to the association, which then takes all of those things and the house and preserves it from that point forward. Now, this still didn't answer for me how we have Dr. Du Bois and our painting. So I did everything I could with the artist and its creation. And so I had to go back to the painting, I had to go back to Dr. Du Bois, and they, the University of Massachusetts at Amherst actually has his collection, like the Library of Congress has Frederick Douglass's collection. So all of the letters, this is a huge collection, mind you, of everything that Dr. Du Bois has ever written is in this archive. So this was quite a research project. I had a lot of help from their archivist who were very gracious in helping me find a connection between the painting and Dr. Du Bois. So what I found is another letter. This one is to Sarah from Dr. Du Bois, in 1914. Okay? He is saying that he is looking at a book, which I have outside on the counter. If you didn't have a chance to look at it, you can surely look at it afterwards. And it has the image of the painting upstairs, an engraving of it in the book. And he loves it. He thinks it's the most excellent and interesting thing, and that he wants her to send it to him. At that time, he is the editor of the Crisis magazine. Okay? So he tells her that he will give it its just due, important people will see it, and that's a good thing. And so, as an artist, and as someone who was very supportive of the civil rights, her family involved in the abolitionist movement, in the women's suffrage movement, she absolutely is someone who wants to help and be supportive. She actually has a subscription to the Crisis. So I have that. This is what he saw, and this is in the book out on the counter. This is a book that was published in 1913. This is Frederick Douglass's signature, which when I told you about the sketches that she sent, she asked for his signature in that letter. And this is the signature that she then uses to be reproduced. And here you can see, I mean, this is the image. This is the image that she worked so tirelessly on. And guess what? She gives it to him. 1915, he announces a portrait of Frederick Douglass has been given to the Crisis by the artist Miss Sarah J. Eddy. If a public institution can be found to buy it, the proceeds will go to the Crisis Fund of the NAACP. But I am here to tell you that I don't know if any money changed hands, but Dr. Du Bois kept this painting. Okay? He, like I said, he was the Crisis for a very long time. And I hate to do this to you, but I have to get off track just a little bit because this was part of the research. It doesn't always go perfectly, right? Has anybody ever heard of Laura Wheeler Warren? Anybody know of her? She was an African-American artist who actually attended the same art school that Sarah James Eddy attended. But she is a friend of Dr. Du Bois and drew covers for the Crisis. This one specifically is one of hers. It's a very intense image. But what's interesting about her, and the reason why she comes into the picture, is because of a letter. And in her letter, she says, I want to copy that painting, that spectacular painting. Will you send it to me so I can copy it? That's what's being said in here. Oh, it's just such a wonderful thing. Would you mind sending that to me? And he said, are you kidding me? I am under no circumstances can the Douglass picture leave my office. It is very large. I am afraid you will have to come here and endure me as you paint. So obviously we know how big it is, and he knew how old it was, how fragile it was, and there was no way it was leaving his office. So believe it or not, she went on numerous occasions, and he actually scolded her once because apparently she took the painting down off of the wall and left it there and left. And when he came back, he was not happy about that and said, you know, make sure that you have someone help you put it back in place. So what drives me crazy about this one is that she apparently was very successful at this painting, and he refers to it later on in a book, Dr. Du Bois does, about how successful she was at the copy. She copies it. I was at the presentation of the Douglass portrait. They seemed pleased with it. So she copies this painting and shows it in Baltimore. Where is it? I don't know. But I'm working on that. I'm working on that because she doesn't say if it's the same size. We don't know how big it is, but definitely it's a copy because she specifically refers to it as that. So this is 1927. Now, in 1933, Dr. Du Bois leaves the crisis. So even though in that document, remember, he said the painting was gifted to the crisis, so you would think then if he leaves the crisis, the painting stays there, right? No, he actually takes it with him to Atlanta University. And I know this because I have a shipping slip that he talks about, that he's having the painting sent to his new office in Atlanta, at Atlanta University. I have had sent down here the Eddy portrait of Frederick Douglass, taken from life, which is, I think, the best, if not the only, oil painting of Douglass extant. I am going to have it hung in my office. Eventually, I think it should be the property of the university. So this is, you know, he's taking good care of it. So that's 1933. We keep moving along. 1938, just a tidbit of information for you. Dr. Du Bois received an honorary PhD from Fisk University. He had his undergrad. He actually graduated in 1888 from Fisk as well. So it's not unusual that they would give him, because of all he had accomplished, an honorary PhD. But unfortunately, by 1943, his relationship with Atlanta had changed, and they dismissed him. Okay? So now I know why he's in his apartment in New York City with this painting, because he has had to leave the university, and wherever Dr. Du Bois goes, this painting goes, right? He really loved this. Now, with all of that information, I answered the question, how is it that he ended up with it in his house in New York City in 1946? That question was answered now through all those series of events. But now my question was, how and when does it end up back here? Right. Exactly. Thank you. I love you for paying attention. So, I want you to know that in 1959, Dr. Du Bois, at 91 years of age, preparing to leave for Ghana, and his last time in America, he passes away there. He cares so much for this portrait that he makes arrangements for it before he leaves. And his arrangement now, because it's Fisk that he has his loyalty to, not Atlanta University anymore. He makes the arrangements to gift his painting to Fisk University. And while he's making those arrangements, here's where I find out why when you sign your name with only initials, as time goes on, people forget whether you were a boy or a girl. Okay? So he forgot. It had been so long since he had written to Sarah Eddy. When he was making arrangements for the painting, he wanted to find out more about the artist. He had forgotten. And he writes, I have a painting from life of Frederick Douglass done by S.J. Eddy. It was given to me some years ago. I have long neglected to find out details about the artist. And he had written to the Rhode Island School, and they had found nothing on him. I want to give this large and excellent portrait to Fisk University in Tennessee, and I would like to also furnish some facts concerning the painter. So that's really, I think, a sad but very interesting, turn of events. In the end, he does, make up information about her. He doesn't really know. He thinks that the artist, again, it's not a her or a he, it's just S.J. Eddy, because that's how she signed the painting, from the Rhode Island School of Design, because she came from Rhode Island, and he just sort of, that was the school, and he put that together. And this, in 1959, he writes to the president of Fisk University that I am gifting this to you, and please put this inscription on it. So I know that this happened. Now you realize how the timeline here, 1959. 1960. We're talking about not that long ago. A press release from Fisk University. Not only do they announce that they've been given this portrait by Dr. Du Bois, but it's been refinished and the frame reconditioned. So, guess what? I found another photograph. And here's the painting. But now it looks beautiful and perfect. This is the painting that was hanging in his apartment in 1946, that original picture that Braden, waved in front of me like, hey, look at this. Oh, what do you think happened? And then I found this photograph. This was in the collection at Amherst. And I said, oh my goodness, look at this. This is not our painting. It has the same frame and it looks the same. Why does ours look so old? I don't know. So it was just so amazing to me. I thought this was a beautiful thing. I had to then find out about this painting in 1960. So I know that Julie mentioned that I'm working at the Capitol now. So I've had the honor of meeting a graduate from Fisk University, and that was Congressman John Lewis. And he took the time to talk with me about this because I really wanted to know what his experience was with this painting. So I have to just preface this, what I'm going to show you, with the fact that I honestly was so in awe of getting to spend time with him that I was fumbling with my camera and made a mistake and cut him off, okay? So I actually had to type in what he said after I stupidly pressed the off button, because I couldn't tell him, oh, would you please do that again? So you can imagine, right? So bear with me on that, and just see here where we're at.
Whatever you want to say about having seen it in Du Bois Hall in the 60s.
As a student in Nashville from 1957 to 1963, 4 years at American Baptist College and 2 years at Fisk University. And even as a student at American Baptist, I visited Fisk University campus many, many times. Had a lot of friends living in the Bois Hall. I stayed there as a student in the dormitory. I stayed on the first floor. And you couldn't miss the painting. I remember the painting. I cannot forget seeing that painting during the height of the movement.
This is what he said. Okay, I promise. He loved Frederick Douglass. He loved being able to walk past that painting. And the fact of the matter is, when he told me it was hanging in there in 1963, when I knew for a fact in 1962 the National Park Service had acquired the house with this painting in it, it became clear to me there were two. So we don't have the only life-size portrait. We have one of the two original life-size portraits that the artist Sarah J. Eddy did paint. She painted one for him that she gave to Frederick Douglass, that he most certainly had in his house all along, because the one that we have upstairs, the frame was never touched. It's never had any paint on it. There's no reconditioning to it. The painting has been reconditioned and refurbished, but it's clearly a separate one. And so this was, kind of an exciting revelation to find this out, that there were two. So whenever you learn something new, then that's the thing about history. It can evolve, you get new answers. So at the same time the gold-framed portrait was hanging at Fisk, we had this painting here. Now, there's a little bit more to the story. Just hang on there. I do want to tell you just a side note or a continuation about Sarah. Remember, poor Sarah, S.J., we couldn't recall whether she was a boy or a girl. They'd forgotten. Her legacy seemed to be lost. Her full name is Sarah James Eddy. It's often misquoted as Sarah Jane Eddy, all kinds of things. She's actually named James after her father. Her father's name is James Eddy. She painted not only two of the most prominent people, but it turns out two of each of those paintings. She painted two of Susan B. Anthony and two of Frederick Douglass. But, you know, that wasn't all she did. She was very much associated with the Humane Society, which is why you may have seen the books out there about cats. She loved cats. And I pointed this out because, again, so sad, this woman has sort of been lost. Even in her obituary, they misspell her name, Sarah E. Eddy. She dies alone, single, at 93, having had no children. She was just 30 when she painted that portrait. But she was friends with him for many years. Her parents actually gifted a lot of money to the women's suffrage movement and were very much involved with Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass all along. So I think that you are the first group of people to ever see an image of the artist, because along with her name being lost, and her being an artist, she was also a photographer who took lots and lots of pictures, but never of herself. And I searched high and low, could not find an image of her. Because of this, I went to the county office in Rhode Island on the phone and ordered her will. And in her will, it said that she gave all of her money to the Humane Society. So who else to contact, right? This is what you do. You get one thing, you go to another. I contact the Humane Society. I get in touch with the vice president of the American Humane Society, who was wonderful. And he had in his personal collection historic copies of the American Humane Society magazine that aren't on file. They haven't been scanned. And he said, guess what, Lisa? I just happened to come across an image of Sarah. And here she is. This is like the only one that we know of. There she is. She's, you know, this image is from 1913. It's the American Humane Review from 1913. This is essentially the person, this is who she was when Dr. Du Bois was writing to her. Okay? So, but 20 years before, she's with Frederick Douglass, painting and talking with him. So, really has anybody who's been following along figured out that there's a missing link here?
You said she died single and alone, and it's been Miss, and there it says Mrs.
No, I know, that's incorrect.
Oh.
Yep, there you go. You know what? Every woman, I think, was a Mrs. Back then. That's the way they documented her, but she was definitely not married. And her obituary, there was just like a stepbrother that she was related to, was the only family member. But, so, now...
What happened to the other artists who went to the same school?
Laura, that's a great question. Laura passed away. That painting that I told you, I don't know where it is, but I contacted her great niece, and she has a warehouse full of her paintings. And she promised to get back to me if she found it. So that, I would love to see that. But you know what I'd love to see more? Is the one that,
Where's the other painting?
Yeah, where's the one that Dr. Du Bois had?
Right.
Yes, that's a good question. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you guys a little piece of paper with my name and phone number on it, so if you find it, please give me a call. Because I had started this last summer and wrote to Fisk repeatedly asking to find out where the painting is. Because it was quite a fanfare, if you recall the photograph of the president, the press release, but the curator has no idea where it is. I'm sad to report. But after talking with the congressman, writing to the president a few times, essentially not giving up, I did receive this letter, and I have to point out, unbeknownst to him, he wrote to me on February 14th. And those of you who know, that's Frederick Douglass's birthday. So I love that. I find that as a thread of hope that we're going to find out the answer. And he says, thank you for bringing the portrait of Frederick Douglass by Sarah Jane. There she goes again. Miswritten, it's Sarah James. Eddy, donated by Dr. Du Bois to Fisk in 1959 to our attention. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. This is kind of funny. Sorry. As you know, Dr. Du Bois, class of '88, is our most celebrated graduate. And his gift of the portrait of Douglass, the former slave and esteemed civil rights advocate, would represent an important cornerstone in our fine art collection. Be assured that we are working diligently to solve this mystery, as we are determined to find out what became of the painting. We hope to have something of substance to report on the matter in the coming weeks. So, I'm sorry to say I don't have the answer yet, but I promise you I won't give up. And I was hoping that someone today might know of someone at Fisk. They might, connections, make some phone calls, maybe could find out. Because I think it took time just getting across to them that we had no interest in it. The Park Service, Frederick Douglass, we don't have a stake in the painting. It's theirs. The artist gave that painting to Dr. Du Bois, and he, rightfully so, gave it to Fisk University. And now we know that because there were two. We initially thought it had made the rounds. They should find it for their own good, because it is a prize for their collection to be proud of. So right now, it doesn't reflect well, obviously, that they can't find it. Because it was hanging in Du Bois Hall. The whole dorm was named after Dr. Du Bois. And so it's one of those things that, your guess is as good as mine. Anybody know where it might be? Know anybody? No? Do you have any questions that I could possibly answer for you? This is the conclusion of my research. I really appreciate you sticking with me, and I hope it made sense. I hope you followed it. Do you have any questions? Yeah?
When you do find it, will you bring us all back together?
The update?
Yes.
If you want to leave your email, like I said, or contact me, I absolutely would be happy to update you on this whenever I find out, because I definitely am not giving up. I think that I've proven that I'm on this. I'm on the case.
The history detectives.
That's what you want. Exactly. History, right. Well, that's my friend over here, Michael, said we should turn it into the history detectives. But I was trying not to go to the press, and I'll tell you why. Because Fisk University has had financial problems, okay? And they went through kind of a scandal not too long ago about selling some paintings that were gifted. A huge, very expensive collection. And so, really, Congressman Lewis was not surprised. He said he wouldn't be surprised if it was sold. Sadly, because they had fallen into so much financial, trouble through the years. And I don't really want to bring that up again, because Fisk is a great university, and it's struggling. And I don't want it to look bad. I just want them to find it. And if they did sell it, I think that they should have record of it. And maybe they could ask the person they sold it to lend it back to them. Something. I mean, they could turn this into a good story. That's why because people had suggested maybe I go to the press, but I didn't really want to.
So is the only confirmation that there were two,
based on his recollection of seeing it specifically in 73 or?
No,
or
63.
63.
60
yeah,
through 63. And the photograph of it in 1960, and at the university, again, having the gold frame and being in perfect condition, compared to the painting in our house in 1962, completely, old, from 1883, and having no evidence of been restored or having gilded over the frame in any way whatsoever. And the fact that I've also spoken with members of the FDNHA, the Frederick Douglass Memorial Historical Association, saying that that painting that we had a photograph of in 1960 had been there for years. It was just laying there. It didn't just pop in 1962. And certainly the one that was hanging in 1960 didn't just run off in 1962. And not only Congressman Lewis, but many other Fisk graduates, alumni, have contacted me saying that they passed it many times. So I have numerous accounts of it. His was just the most compelling. So, but yeah, great question. That's really why I worked so hard, because I needed, for my sake, to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there were two.
Me or Nate?
Whichever.
So now that we know, I guess, a little bit more about Sarah, Eddy, as you pronounce her
I'm
name.
saying Eddy.
Eddy,
You
okay.
can say Edie until
Okay.
I go to Rhode Island.
Is there going to be any more research about her, since we don't know, like, what, after we find, I guess, the missing puzzle to this particular piece,
Right.
Is there going to be more research about Mrs. Sarah Eddy? So we'll know who exactly she is.
Right.
Because she just painted this, both, portraits of Frederick Douglass and then Susan B. Anthony. So are we going to hear about her a little bit more from you? I mean, what's next?
I did not pay him to say that.
She did, I promise.
Well, actually, I'm working on putting together a biography on her, because she is known in so many separate circles. She's known with the Humane Society because of all the work she did with animals, the money she gifted to them. She's known in photography circles. She showed at many salons, even throughout Europe, her photography. And also, she had involved in an art school in Rhode Island. She gifted money to her local library for a children's reading room. She was a philanthropist and really carried that on with her family. So her whole family, and her mom specifically, was very active with Susan B. Anthony, so much so that Sarah and her sister lived with her father in Rhode Island when her mother kind of ran off with Susan B. Anthony and the whole gang of women's suffrage fighters, and were really part of that movement and actually funded a lot of that activity. So I plan to put all that together, all those pieces together, because she's only known in these separate things. The Humane Society didn't know that she painted the portrait. So these are things that I want to connect together for her.